I feel like I've been watching too much fighting movies and whatnot lately. Because
Oh yeah.
when the countdown goes, I'm thinking bell's gonna ring in the background.
What have you watched recently?
I rewatched Rocky 3 because it had to be done. It had been too long.
Okay.
And Mr. T
All right. Nice.
and Adrian yelling at Rocky, "You get well, good there." So classic.
Yeah, those are good movies.
Have you seen all the Rockies? I'm assuming you have, Josh.
It's been a very long time, but yeah, I've definitely watched all of them. I like Stallone. I like his style. Him and Arnold and that whole story is
That whole
awesome.
era, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Back in the day. Back in the day. Now I'm watching Peaky Blinders.
Okay.
I just started watching that recently. Have you seen that show?
I have. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Super violent show.
Have you watched all the
Yeah.
seasons?
Probably just the first season.
Okay. Got it. Got it. I'm not going to spoil anything or whatnot.
You can spoil it if you have a fun story, but like that's an intense show. And something has happened over like the past 5 years of like probably watching tons of Disney movies is like some of the hyper violent stuff that I used to love, like John Wick. And I don't know, like it's tough to
Right.
watch sometimes.
Quick kick for a bit.
Yeah. Oh yeah. While I was doing my bike.
Okay. I'm trying to get more steady state start cardio. I guess that's a good place to start with the Fit Quest, right?
Yeah. Yeah. What are we talking about today? We're talking about, so we'll do our Fit Quest and then we're going to talk about different ways of working out at work.
Yeah. I'm trying to figure out the exact name for this. This is why I love the podcast though. So we can hash it out in a way. But I'm trying to figure out, I guess it comes back to movement snacks, which we've talked about before, but I'm solidify movement snacks for people who have a usual 9 to 5 kind of lifestyle and how to fit that in. Because I know I talk about like how I fit it in, but I know my lifestyle is not the same as my clientele's lifestyle that much. Right.
Right.
And
Yeah. I was definitely thinking about talking the 9 to 5, but the 9 to 5 is not normal. We would have to talk about like remote work, people who work in retail and restaurant,
yeah,
people, and then people who work in labor. So I was thinking low labor, mid labor, and high labor.
got it.
So
Like that. I like that
yeah.
a lot. Okay. Sweet.
All right. So we'll
That's what
get
we're going
into
to talk
all
about.
that.
That's what we're going to talk movement snacks for different levels of labor at work.
Yep. Yep. And then we're also going to do a pilot of our equipment highlight.
Okay.
And so we'll do that real quick after our Fit Quest. Today we'll talk about kettlebells. We might have to rehash kettlebells in the future, but we'll talk about it for a couple minutes today.
All right. Sweet. I like that. The segment. It's a segment. We have.
Yeah.
Look at that.
We're trying to do a segment or like a mini feature.
A mini
something
feature.
like
Okay.
I like segment.
Producer Josh.
Yeah.
That's cool, man. All right. Do you want to start? Or do you want me to start? Big Quest.
You start today.
Okay. So, steady state. That's a going theme right now with me with my Fit Quest. And it's a little bit self-propelling with, I feel like this a lot of times with my clients where I'll see something a lot with my clients. And then I'm trying to do like my PSAs and my interventions and my coaching to focus on that. And then I end up doing it myself because I'm talking about it so damn much.
Oh yeah. It's fun to like, whenever you start thinking about one thing, you always want to do it. Like whenever a trainer learns something new or like the whole group of trainers at a gym learn something new,
Yeah,
you
right.
can always see them, like each trainer is doing that with their different clients and stuff like that.
It gets trendy. It's funny how it gets trendy in the gym. Yeah. Oh man, that'd be a fun thing to have at a gym. You know how they have like leaderboards for people's weights?
Yeah.
But not like, here's the person who did this weight and that weight. It'd be cool to put like trending exercises at the gym this week.
And rank them.
Yeah. And rank them.
All right. Yeah, I would love that. It would pretty much just be like bench press and glute bridge, like all the time. Top 5.
Yeah. Top 5. That's true. That trend might not change too much. But like Mondays is pretty much bench press day, and then everybody forgets about it. I feel like no, actually, if they come in later in the week, it's just because they missed Monday and they still trying to get bench press in first.
Exactly. But it would change though a lot with the trainers, which I think would be fun. They had a gym that has like a ton of trainers.
Yeah, okay. So maybe like top 5 training exercises according to the trainers at that gym.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Okay. I like that. I I want to do it, but I don't want to go through the work of doing it, so it'll never happen. But yes.
So what steady state stuff have you been doing recently with your Fit Quest?
Yeah, so I've been working on just walking more instead of biking for my short rides,
Okay.
not for my high intensity rides that I was talking about before.
Mm-hmm.
But if I know I'm gonna have a short ride, just down the road or something like that, I'll try and walk that
Okay.
distance. So I'm trying to replace my short rides with walking a little bit more.
Okay.
I'm usually competing with my wife to get more steps than her. So by egging her on, I egg myself on.
Because that's funny. That always works with the wife, but you
Yes.
have a mini long-term goal of hiking, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. And we went on a hike this past weekend,
Okay.
and we went with my sister to Bears Den,
Oh, nice.
which is a pretty easy hike, but it wasn't that easy. And I was a little concerned at first because I knew I was going to have to carry my son pretty much the whole way, my 2-year-old.
Yeah.
And he's like a kettlebell, a full pood right now. He's a full 36 pounds.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good weight.
Yeah. So it was 1.3 miles with a good amount of elevation gain out and back and 36 pounds on my back this past weekend. And then
Okay.
we went to the Bluemont Fair after that and walked all around that place,
Okay.
which is almost more tiring than the hike. At least the hike, if I have direction, and I feel like this is the same for a lot of people, if you can clearly see your purpose and your vision,
Like a beginning and an end.
a beginning and an end, I could visualize what the peak looks like. Like I know when I'm coming around this corner, how many other steep climbs I have or not, basically. But when I'm in chaos, like the Bluemont Fair, I was so much more tired, which was interesting to me. And I really think it's because of the mental fatigue,
Yeah.
yeah. Just watching the kids, trying to keep track of everything, not knowing where we're going to go next, not knowing how long we're going to stay there.
I think not knowing your end, like at the hike, you really have a beginning and end. It's like a race where if you're just aimlessly walking around, like there is no end in your mind. So your mind doesn't have oh, I'm almost there. It's just, I'm stuck in a desert in the middle of nowhere. When am I going to leave? And I think that's like a state your mind gets in that you have to control that yourself and be like, all right, we're leaving at 4. I know we're leaving in an hour. I got this
Yes.
type of thing. I wonder if that would trick you into like being less tired.
I wonder, because that's what it made me think about a lot, is I did that hike and I was a little worried about that hike, but I've been training for being able to go on hikes and carry the kids and all that kind of stuff, like we've been talking about. And I felt really able with that. But then, and it wasn't because I was super tired from the hike that the Bluemont Fair felt like that.
Yeah.
But then later we went to the Bluemont Fair and I was like, what the hell is happening here? Why am I like this right now?
Right.
And that's really interesting because I'm training for both of those scenarios, basically. It's not just the hikes. I'm also train to be able to do the hikes so I can have fun at the things and not be tired too.
It's one thing when you're training with a 35-pound backpack or kettlebell. It's another thing, like where you don't have to think about that kettlebell, like jumping out of your arms or like going somewhere else and getting lost or something crazy like that. You have a literal live human being. And I think that takes a lot of your like total load just to mentally be there for your kid. And I think that would probably have a lot to do with it.
Yeah, I was thinking about like how the nervous system must be very occupied, basically, and was much less occupied on the hike. Even though I had my kids with me on the hike, one was strapped to me and the other one was with her aunt, basically. My job just to keep people in line and safe,
Yeah.
So I could actually go slower because I was the fastest person there. So everybody else I could chill with a little bit more
Right.
and my energy. So it
Yeah.
felt like it was a energy management thing. And it also felt like my nervous system just was super occupied to the point where my musculoskeletal, the rest of my body systems were just able to do the minimum or the norm, basically.
Right. All right. That's good to be aware of that kind of stuff just for future and everything.
Right.
But
And now I'm talking to everybody about steady state cardio, basically, because finding that when I'm talking to people about their goals and we're going into this time of year, that they are doing good. A lot of them are doing good with the moderate intensity and the high intensity work, but they're really not getting very much low intensity work.
okay.
And they're feeling stuck. And what we talked about before, like optimal training, a little bit of continuance of that. I think what people are missing in that fit principle a lot of times that is that low intensity work. At least that's what I'm finding right now. I'm seeing a lot right now.
Okay.
I'm PSAing it out on public service announcement often right now.
Because our next podcast is going to be, we're going to do a low intensity. So
Yeah.
that is what we're going to do for our next podcast. So we'll get into this a little bit more in depth because I think there's a lot to it besides just going out and walking. Like a lot of people don't seem to get a lot out of it, but I think there's a lot of benefits that we will go into when we do that episode.
Yes. Yes. So that's a little cue up. And I've been thinking about that. It's also why we want to talk about it too, basically.
Oh yeah.
But
I
I mean,
think,
we're working on that and working on helping my clients with that this week, I would say the most. And then strength training on the regular.
okay. For us as coaches, just being able to get them into all their zones and really phasing that in and out because it's going to change like through every part of the year and every other program you add into it is going to change a little bit. And I think that's a fun thing for the client. And then it's also a fun thing for us to be able to experiment because it is a little bit different with every person. And sometimes you need to have a little bit higher intensity going on. Sometimes you need a little bit lower intensity. And that's usually dependent upon a little bit what we're going to talk about today, like at work and whatnot. It also depends on the season and it can depend on a million other little things that are going on in your life too.
Yes. Yes. So that's pretty much my thick quest. I would say, if you want me to go in depth about my strength training, it's pretty much the same as last week. I haven't changed much.
If you haven't changed much, I say we're good to go. We don't need to go too in depth if we're not changing anything. Did you change reps or anything like that, or it was just all the same this week? Business as usual.
Pretty much all the same. I guess I did get, let's see, today's going to be my third one of the week. So I'm doing pretty good with getting 3 every week right now. For a while, it was 2. And then every once in a while, getting 3.
Yeah.
So I'm getting 3 in. Yeah. Getting my goal for my workouts right now is to get like 75% of what I've written down in terms of total rounds. And if I can get 75%, I'm happy. And I've been getting that and sometimes 100%.
Good.
I
I think the lesson a lot with the Fit Quest that people should see if they've been listening over time is that, yeah, it's really fun when we like change our workout plan, but then it's just boring business as usual, like for a few weeks, unless weird little things come in like events. And that's why we like to still talk about the Fit Quest because we can change it up a little bit when other things in our life happen.
right.
But really, when it comes to the program, stick to it for whatever 4 to 8 weeks or until it stops working. And boring is good sometimes.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Boring is good. I'm happy that it's boring right now. I'm happy with it. I'm trying to do more calves. I'm actually trying to do more mobility throughout the week.
Okay.
I am trying to do more calf raises for my Achilles, more shin stretches for Achilles. I'm trying to do more Achilles rehab. And then I'm noticing after I went frisbee golfing how tight my freaking chest is.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I'm trying to stretch and massage my chest a lot. So if I'm grabbing my moobs today, that's good. That's how they call them.
Okay. Cool. I like it.
Mm.
I like that. That's good to notice that. And so we actually went out like a week ago and did some frisbee golf,
Yeah.
and which was always a lot of fun, man. And was it raining or it just rained? So it was like super wet that day.
But it was like, it felt very, I told you, I'm watching Peaky Blinders, basically. It felt very Irish roots-esque, and it was foggy, and there's all green. We just had the field. We had the whole course to ourselves, I felt.
Oh yeah, exactly. And when we knew at the beginning, we're like, okay, tomorrow our biceps will be sore, which is interesting to think about in like the frisbee and like the how you would throw it. And for me, I didn't have any chest issues, and I wonder it's because like my main thing has just been yoga for so long that my chest just isn't really tight anymore. And the amount of golf I play, it's just really keeps my chest open and my arms moving and my shoulders moving. I think getting that whole area really loosens up over time. And because I do remember my chest being tight before, like when I was lifting, but this year it's just been a little bit different.
Yeah, overhead presses, honestly. I've been pushing the overhead presses,
Yeah.
which I haven't been doing a lot of, like, heavy overhead presses, low rep, heavy overhead presses for years almost. And I just started adding those in. My upper body feels so strong, but then I'm like, oh yeah, new muscle is tight muscle if you don't move it.
I was going to say, it sounds like you're engaging a lot of probably your front delt, right?
Front, outer.
That would
That's, yep.
if you're doing a lot of those shoulder presses, which is probably tightening up your chest a little bit. If you haven't been doing too much horizontal pressing and mainly like vertical pressing.
Yep.
Okay, that's fun.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I this week I added so my fit you ended your fit quest, right? So my fit quest, so we did that the frisbee golf, which was always a lot of fun. Um, my back is still recovering. I'm like 90%, but I'm like waking up just a little bit tight and stuff like that throughout the week. But I'm on like 8 days straight of yoga. I'm taking off from exercise today, but might go out for a 2 mile walk this afternoon. It's raining. There's like a hurricane coming through our area. So like yesterday I went walking with an umbrella and like my umbrella was like flying away.
Yeah. Good mountains, which is nuts, coming up the mountains.
Yeah.
But I wonder, I know the mountains typically will slow things down and cut up storms a little bit. So
It changes them for sure.
it,
I used to work on that golf course that's close to where you live called Stone Lee.
oh yeah.
And so we were pretty good at judging the storms that were coming over the mountain. And it would be really funny. Like our little area would just disperse the storm. It would either disperse the storm or the storm would just sit there forever. And so things like mountains really affect the weather, which is crazy to think about. But we are fitness professionals, not weather people.
Yes. Yes. I just know that there's a reason why people congregate towards a valley kind of picture as a paradise-esque picture.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons is because it's safer and more predictable from large storms and big storms and those kind of things.
Yeah. Very cool. And the fertile land.
Yeah. Fertile land. Yeah.
Yeah. But really my fit quest is pretty boring this week. I did add some, I still want to do a little bit of like non-yoga stuff. So this week I did an arms day, which was fun. Yeah. Yeah. Arnold was on and that's what I was watching and getting inspired by.
Yes.
Cause I never do an arms day, but I'm like, what can I do to not hurt my back or whatever? And it's still going to help my golf swing and whatnot.
Yep.
So I definitely do my golf swing in between sets of, so like curls or tricep presses on the cable or whatever, just for some mobility. And I want them to work with the swing. And I don't know if there's any science behind this or anything, but doing curls and all that kind of stuff and then grabbing the golf club and doing the swing. I want my swing to be able to swing when I'm a little weak and my muscles are a little strained, like just in case I work out and then get called to the golf course and I go play. And I was thinking in my head that as my muscles are like broken down from the lifting, that it sends this like new signal to my muscles that like this is what you're supposed to do because it's rebuilding muscle. And so I'm thinking just like life, right when you learn something and right when you become alive, like you're really capable of learning more. So I'm thinking that maybe my muscles will learn that pattern better right when they're coming back. That's just a theory, but it would make sense if you're following like the path of life. And that's what our muscles generally do that.
Yeah, I think situational training can be really useful. And you're putting in what some people would call like a muscle activation drill,
Yeah.
right? So you're doing a muscle activation drill and then you're doing situational training with the movements related to golf, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's more skill practice than it is like strength practice. Exactly.
Mhm.
Not to say that it's not strength. It's just maybe like 40% skill and like 20% strength and 20% other stuff or
Yeah.
percent other stuff. 40%.
Mobility.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. But it's a large chunk and that's much more skill related. And I think it's really important to do skill stuff that will help you transfer your strength skills
Yeah.
into your sports skills.
Yeah.
Is that what you're trying to do?
Oh, yeah. It's just so when you think about somebody doing like an arm day, I also did a pull up and push up day. But when you think about somebody doing those, like you think about like their muscles getting tight and getting shortened. And so I want to do my swing at the same time, like in between sets, just so that it adapts more to a golf swing than adapting more to the shortened state that the muscle will get in when it gets tight. Like that, that's like my thoughts when I do that. It's mainly mobility, but I was curious of if there was any science to adding the golf swing in between, like if that does anything for golf.
I think it's possible. I think it's possible. I think that's hard to test. I'm trying to think of the words that you would look for if you were looking through like journal articles, for example, for how they would how they test something like that.
Yeah.
Situational is not actually the scientific term. There is actually something for that. I can't remember what it is, but there might be some keywords to look up for that to see if any research has come in with people doing. It could be like functional, but I don't always like the functional research. A little cloudy. I'm gonna,
Yeah.
I'm gonna not get into the weeds though too much with it. But what you said reminded me of. Have you heard of the book Art of Learning?
I don't think so.
Okay, The Art of Learning. Do you know who Josh Waitzkin is?
No.
Okay, do you know Bobby Fischer was?
The chess guy?
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So there was a movie that was made called Searching for Bobby Fischer. It was a story about Josh Waitzkin, a little boy at the time, who became like a chess prodigy, and everybody was calling him the next Bobby Fischer. And
Okay.
he became a bit of a chess prodigy around the time when Bobby Fischer really had disappeared in a mysterious way, it seemed. For who knows, I think he had some kind of psychological disorder going on or something.
Yeah.
But I don't remember exactly. Point being, Bobby searching for Bobby Fischer, Josh Waitzkin, the chess prodigy, got burnt out on chess. And you hear that a lot of times with like younger athletes getting burnt out on their sport or endeavor.
Oh,
But he got really far. He was like national champion and world chess champion contender. And she moved into, what was it? Tai Chi push hands, I believe, and applied the skills he had learned from getting good at chess to Tai Chi push hands and did really well. And then he went into jujitsu on the world stage, did really well, and applied the same skills and is doing really well, basically.
right.
Like 40 something now. He keeps to himself. He's only been on like a few interviews and podcasts. I think he's been on Tim Ferriss is where I heard of him. And he wrote a book called The Art of Learning.
Yeah.
It's so good. And it reminds me all the time of the grooves that our brain has to create for the signals to be sent at the time that they want them to be sent.
Right.
And I think your training, long story short, with exemplifies that. So
Right.
I would suggest people read that book if they want to learn about how you learn and how you can implement experiments to do these kind of things to a lot of context, because he talks a lot about the grooves that you got to get into and the phases of learning that you have to go through. Yeah. Good
Oh,
stuff.
all right. I like it. All right. But that's my fit quest though.
The big question. Okay.
All right.
Exercise equipment.
Yeah. Are we going to try to do a kettlebell today? Just real quick to kind of experiment. What would we even talk about?
Okay. This is like, I think of these like a soliloquy or a devotion to a piece of equipment, like why we love it or what we think. Okay.
Okay.
Um, Kettlebell, how I love thee. Let me count the ways. Basically, I just think the kettlebell is amazing because it is one of the simplest pieces of strength training equipment with maybe the most carryover to daily life that I've seen in a single piece of strength training equipment. Period.
Boom. That makes sense.
I can say why if you want me to, or you can give your reason why you love the kettlebell or hate it even.
Oh, man. Let's see. I love the kettlebell because that it is almost, I can do almost all of my dumbbell work with the kettlebell. And then kettlebell, it's harder to do explosive work with a dumbbell. And so I can do a lot more explosive work with the kettlebell. So I think it's just a little bit more multifaceted than a regular dumbbell.
Did you have a kettlebell phase when you were first introduced to kettlebell where you tried to do a whole bunch of different kettlebell things and learn all the different kettlebell exercises?
I think I started following CrossFit like online, like just CrossFit, like WOD of the day or something like that 20 years ago. And I remember getting a kettlebell and just swinging randomly. And yeah, and I think I did everything. I did hurt myself the most doing kettlebell stuff though. So even with a light weight, you can put a lot of pressure on you. There's this crazy, I don't want to go too much into it. There's this like crazy workout online. It's I think it's actually Dan John, the guy we like, but it's like
10,000 swing challenge?
10,000 swing
Oh my
challenge.
goodness, he's killed so many people's backs with that challenge.
It is not a fun challenge. Like I remember being like 5 days into it when this was when I was in pretty good shape and just being like, this is way too much. Like for my body. And because I would be doing like 100 a day. I don't even remember now, but it was 100 or a couple hundred a day with like big sets. Like I would try and do sets of 50 at a time or something like that. And yeah, and I remember being so hurt after it was like 5 or 7 days, and then I just woke up the next day and could barely walk and be like, "All right, I'm not doing this anymore."
Yeah. 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 So that's the caveat I would say with kettlebells. I think people don't understand that because the weight is so densely packed, you don't need to do as many repetitions, and it's going to be harder to do those repetitions, and it's going to be harder to stabilize all that density in such a small spot,
Yeah,
basically, which is great about it because you don't need a lot of weight to get really strong because you work
right.
on your stabilizers a lot, but people can go into it way too hard. So I don't really give kettlebells to beginners. I give kettlebells to like late beginner stage, early intermediate stage, unless they have a lot of the athletic background or requirements already passed in my eyes, I would say, which would put them more in a late beginner stage already, honestly.
Right, right. All right, cool. Yeah, I like it. Quick and easy. That's what we're trying to do here with
Yeah, a little
equipment review.
overview of our love or hate for a piece of equipment
Okay,
and a little recommendation, basically.
sure. Okay.
That's basically what we did, right? There you
Yeah.
go. There's
Yeah. All right, sweet. All right. All right, let's get to, we have what, about 10, 12 more minutes left.
Yeah.
We can talk about working out at work.
Okay.
All right. So, all right, this is what I was thinking. We already said it a little bit at the beginning, right? Like we can do small, medium, and a lot of load. And so labor work and warehouse work is probably like a higher load.
Yep.
And then like retail work and restaurant work is like a mid load because you
Gotcha.
can be really tired after those shifts.
Yep.
And then office work, we're going to say is just like sitting at a cubicle from 9 to 5.
Okay. Okay.
And then so let's break it down with that, and
Okay.
let's start with office work.
Okay. So I love this. And I love that we did the optimal training podcast because I'm just going to refer to that so many freaking times. But you'll notice across these different levels of work, okay, that we just segmented different groups into, that some of them get a lot more high intensity, some of them get a lot more moderate intensity, and some of them get a lot more low intensity frequency, basically.
Right.
Right? The people in desks all day are getting very little of everything, I would say. But maybe if they're taking a class or two or doing some workouts every once in a while, they're getting some moderate work in, I would say. That's the most likely. But most of the time, they're getting the least amount of activity with maybe some moderate, maybe some high intensity work in there. I don't see them getting enough low intensity work.
Okay.
Which I would say seems counterintuitive for a lot of them. And it's also harder for a lot of them, which is why they're not getting, because low intensity work usually takes more time unless you build it into your day.
Right.
It's going to be very hard to be like, I need to get 30 to 60 minutes of low intensity work every day. And I need to block that time out in my calendar to do that. It's not going to happen with those people as much.
Right.
So that's why I really like the ideas of parking far away from places, finding opportunities when you can walk to things or pick things up, figuring out ways to maybe walk around when you have slow times around the office or take steps at the office. For example, if you're doing virtual calls, do something like a virtual call outside if you can, if you have good signal, for example.
Right.
Or doing a virtual call on a treadmill if possible, or doing a virtual call where you can just do some stretches or some simple movements, especially those big meetings where you got 20 people in the room or something like that.
Right.
How can you?
Just stand up in the middle of the meeting and start doing some air squats?
Yes, but you got to turn your camera off first.
Right.
Yeah. Or taking a more active lunch break, those kinds of things. That's where
Those are all really good tips. It's like you have to be better at NEAT. Yeah, like when you're in an office and you're really not having a lot of movement, sometimes you're stuck in your seat for 2 hours or 3 hours at a time. So just getting really good at the small stuff. I love the idea of just so you only have a couple of times, like at lunchtime and then before work and after work is when you're getting like your class, right? You're a little bit higher intensity. So using all your other time to walk down to the snack area or walk to your car or take a lap around the building or so, anytime you have downtime, I love that.
And I like to remind people, and they know this too, but they do, and they like to be reminded of this. I know this too, that when you do those kind of things, your productivity tends to go up as well.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
You get like a little burst.
And your brain gets that extra blood flow and problems that were hard become easier. And one of the magical things about it is just changing the environment that you're in will move your brain space to different parts, your brain activity to different parts of your brain. And then when you come back, it'll put it back there, but it'll touch the other areas of your brain because we have very spatial memory and brain function.
Right. So it's like just taking a break. It's like putting your work and then it goes into another part of your brain and scrubs it all down. And then you go back inside.
I love defragmentation, basically. So when you go to the other part of your brain, the part that was working really hard gets a little defragmented.
Yeah.
while it's chilling and you're in another area. Be really useful for that processor, if you're thinking computer terms, to run.
I like it. I like it. Cause you'll definitely like if you're stuck in a problem or something like that, you go out for a walk, you come back. A lot of times you can be like, oh, wait, this is what happens. And then you would do it a little bit differently. I like it.
Right. Or you got an email that you're trying to figure out how to write.
We could talk about this forever, like for this office thing, because we're just talking about low intensity cardio now. And we haven't even talked about like little movements or if there's a gym in your office, like you could just pop in there and do a couple pull-ups, like in the same sense of going for a walk outside or whatever. I think there's so many options. And if you are sitting down, when you get up, make sure your movements are really for opening up your chest and helping with your posture and everything at work. I think is something that's super important.
Yeah. And the things that are going to give you the most bang for your buck are moving areas that have been shortened or tightened during your non-movement. Desk posture type of muscles, the shoulders, the neck, the butt. Oh my goodness. The butt, I would say, is a big one. About getting people to use their butt more when they're sitting on it so damn much.
Just activating it a little bit more.
Okay, so let's move to heavier intensity or moderate intensity. So, like people who walk around a good bit and are getting a lot of that lower intensity NEAT, but they're not, what are they missing a lot of times?
So retail and restaurant, there might be lifting a bunch of lightweight stuff, maybe 10 pounds or 5 pounds, but nothing heavy. But I do think they are walking like a ton, like an insane amount on certain days. So what are they missing? Well, in exercise terms, maybe heavier load, but also breaks, like just not being able to rest their legs or anything like that. I think is huge. So what I think happens is that your core gets weak the day. So I think those are a couple things that might happen. And then probably not too much mobility stuff.
I would say a big thing is the core and the mobility for almost all of these intensities. And the glutes. Gosh, there's a couple ones that are really big for all of these, but they change based on who we're talking to. So these people, I mean, if they're on their feet a lot, we're not worrying as much about their posture as we were with the previous group, right? We're worrying more about their ankles and their hips and their low back and those kind of things, right?
I think so. It's a tough one because if you are standing up for 6 hours, your posture is going to get weak unless you're really programmed into keeping your posture up and things like that. So I think there could be a lot to talk about. What would you do? What would you do if you work at a restaurant and you can't sit down for 5 hours and your feet are hurting, your lower back's hurting because your core is a little weak? I feel like there's a little bit less you can do at a restaurant or retail, like during the time, and you would have to worry more about the things that you can do in the off time than during like your actual shift.
Yeah. Looking for opportunities to rest, taking those opportunities.
If you do have opportunities during your shift, yeah. But like afterward, recovery is probably important. You probably shouldn't just go home and go to sleep. Like how many people are getting off at 2 a.m. sometimes, or they just worked for 12 hours. They go home and they sit down on a couch or they sit down or they go to sleep. That should probably be some kind of recovery time after that. But sleep is important, but I think that you should probably do some stretching or something like that. What would you recommend?
I would say with these populations, I think of them a lot like my endurance athletes
Okay.
a lot of times. And I think with these populations, we see a lot of asymmetry throughout the day. Like you're always going to be balancing, if you're a waiter, you're going to be balancing things with like your dominant hand, right? You're going to be picking up things with your dominant hand. You're going to be leaning on the counter with your dominant side. You're going to be holding that standing position with one side all the time, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Which I think is going to add a lot to the load really quickly. So I think it's really useful to be aware of those things or start building awareness about those things. I don't think people notice those things much. That will help a lot with your mobility and your tightness, I would say. So figuring out the things that are putting on the load,
Yeah.
seeing if you can distribute that load a little bit more evenly,
Okay.
working on opportunities to rest. And then, yes, when you can, especially at the end of the day, like trying to, what's the word? Deload, I guess, in a way that helps you recover versus just dropping
Right.
to the bed. Because then everything that's been getting tight is going to pretty much just roll into more tightness and get solidified there overnight. If you can move things around and use like a foam roller, for example, or do some exercises that really help you stretch out right before bed, it
Yeah.
might help you. It probably will help people, especially people who are hurting a good bit and have a hard time sleeping because they're hurting. That's probably one of the best motivators and easiest things to do for it.
Right.
But
All
then
right.
the awareness throughout the day is another big one.
I really like the awareness and just learning different ways of like handling it throughout the day. I think that can change just so many people. Are you constantly on your left hip, like leaning towards your left hip or something like that? And then you're getting pain in your left hip the next day. Just being aware and maybe just standing up straighter or not leaning a certain way
Or
for
even
out.
trying out leaning on the other hip, like go on
Yeah.
the for a little bit when you
I think Right, talking about balance. If you tend to lean on your hip and then 30 minutes into leaning on your left hip, you realize, okay, I need to now go on my right hip, and then you balance yourself out.
exactly.
Is there anything you want to say here at the end? I know I think we can talk about this stuff a lot longer, but we're going to have to do another episode at a different time.
I know, right?
It's super interesting. Working out at work and how to deal with different types of work is insanely interesting. And I think that most people don't talk about it as much, but we work more than almost anything. We work and sleep more than anything else. And so being able to work and move optimally and then be able to put ourselves back together before going to sleep, I think is just such a huge thing that we should get into on a different episode again.
Yeah, let's do a little continuation of this. Yeah, 'cause more and more things pop up in my head as we say it,
Yeah.
basically. And I think I might jump around a little bit more if we have a little bit more time, but I think that might be useful for people to hear. But the big thing I think that's popping out in my head right now is really increasing that awareness about, uh, I don't want to say asymmetry. I want to say just parts of your body that are out of balance with the other side of your body as
Yeah.
much. Even if you watch this video when we're talking right now, I'll lean on my right side. I'll lean on my left side. I'll stand one way. I'll stand another way. And that's mostly my ADHD. But if you can do a little bit of that more and you can be a little bit more aware, you're going to have a lot less pain. And I think that goes across for all the different work types, but it's more specific for each one. So it's more related to sitting for the low intensity. It's more related to walking, being on your feet a lot, maybe light carrying for the moderate intensity. For the high intensity, it's more for the heavy lifting, picking things up, bending over type stuff that you're going to be doing throughout the day. And they get a lot of steps a lot of times too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
That's a rough one. We'll have to do a whole episode on that one.
Yeah. That works.
All right, Mike. It was a fun talk.
All right. Thank you for listening, everybody. Stay tuned for more fun.
All right. See you guys.